The August sun beat down mercilessly on the parched earth of Clifton Hill, Arizona Territory, in the summer of 1883, and Penelope Summers felt each step from the creek to her small wooden cabin like a punishment from the heavens themselves. Her husband had been dead 3 months now, taken by fever that swept through their homestead like wildfire, leaving her alone with 2 young children and a piece of land that demanded more from her than she had left to give. The wooden buckets hung heavy from the yoke across her shoulders, water sloshing against the sides with each labored step, and her vision swam in the oppressive heat as black spots danced at the edges of her sight. The path from the creek wound uphill through rocky terrain, a journey she made 4 times each day just to keep her family in enough water for drinking, cooking, and the small vegetable garden that kept them from starving. Her arms trembled under the weight, muscles screaming in protest, and sweat poured down her face despite the bonnet she wore. Penelope had always been strong, had worked alongside her husband Thomas when he was alive, but the combination of grief, exhaustion, and the relentless Arizona heat was taking its toll on her 22-year-old body. She could see her cabin in the distance, could hear her daughter Mary calling out to her younger brother Samuel, their voices carrying on the hot wind. Just a few more steps, just a little further. Her foot caught on a rock she should have seen, should have avoided like she had dozens of times before, but her reflexes were too slow, her body too tired. Penelope felt herself falling forward, tried to catch herself, but the weight of the water pulled her down hard. The buckets crashed against the ground, precious water spilling across the dusty earth, and everything went dark. Isaac Morrison had been riding the fence line of the Double M Ranch when he saw her fall. He had noticed the young widow before, had seen her making those trips to the creek day after day, her back bent under the weight of survival. The ranch where he worked bordered her small homestead, and more than once he had wanted to offer help, but there was something about her fierce independence that made him hold back. She carried herself with dignity despite her circumstances, and he respected that. But watching her collapse in the dirt changed everything. He spurred his horse into a gallop, covering the distance in seconds. Isaac swung down from the saddle before his mount had fully stopped, his boots hitting the ground hard as he ran to where she lay motionless. Her bonnet had come loose, revealing dark brown hair that had escaped its pins, and her face was alarmingly pale beneath the dust and sun exposure. He could see her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, and relief flooded through him that she was alive. "Madam, can you hear me?" Isaac carefully turned her onto her back, checking for injuries. The children were running toward them now, the little girl maybe 6 years old and the boy no more than 4. Their faces were streaked with worry and dirt, and he could see the fear in their eyes that they might lose their mother too. Penelope's eyelids fluttered open, and she looked up at him with confusion clouding her hazel eyes. "The water," she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. "I spilled the water." "Do not worry about the water right now," Isaac said gently. He was a tall man, lean and weathered from years working cattle under the Arizona sun, with dark hair and gray eyes that had seen their share of hardship. At 26 years old, he had saved enough from his wages to think about buying his own piece of land someday, but that dream seemed less important in this moment than helping this struggling family. "Let me get you inside. Children, can you get your mama some water from inside the house?" "We do not have any left," Mary said in a small voice. "That's why Mama went to the creek." Isaac felt something tighten in his chest. He lifted Penelope easily, her slight weight alarming in his arms, and carried her toward the cabin. The children followed close behind, Samuel clutching his sister's hand. The inside of the cabin was neat despite its poverty, everything in its place, but he could see the signs of struggle everywhere. The pantry shelves were nearly bare. The furniture showed signs of being sold off piece by piece, and there were patches in the walls where the desert wind had found its way through. He settled Penelope on the narrow bed in the corner and pulled his canteen from his belt. "Drink this slowly," he instructed, supporting her head as he brought the water to her lips. She drank gratefully, and some color began to return to her face. The children hovered nearby, watching with wide eyes. "I am fine," Penelope said, trying to sit up. "I just need to rest for a moment, then I will go back to the creek." "Like hell you will," Isaac said, then immediately apologized for his language in front of the children. "Begging your pardon, madam, but you just collapsed from exhaustion and heat. You are not going anywhere today." He turned to study her face more carefully now that she was conscious. She was beautiful in a worn sort of way, her features delicate but her jaw set with determination that spoke of inner strength. "How long have you been doing this alone?" "Since Thomas died in May," Penelope said quietly. "I managed just fine. You just fell unconscious carrying water. That is not managing fine." Isaac stood and paced the small cabin, his mind already working on the problem. "That creek is half a mile from here, and you are making how many trips a day?" "4, usually, sometimes 5 in the summer." Isaac did some quick calculations in his head. That was miles of walking every single day, carrying heavy buckets up an incline in heat that could kill a full-grown man. "You need a well," he said simply. Penelope laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A well costs money I do not have. The land payment is due in 2 months, and I have been selling everything I can spare just to keep us fed. A well is a dream that does not fit into my life right now. What if someone built it for you?" She looked at him with suspicion in her eyes. "Why would anyone do that?" "What would you want in return?" The question stung, but Isaac understood it. A woman alone had to be careful, had to question every offer of help that came her way. Men in this territory were not always kind to widows, and he had heard stories that made his blood boil. "I want nothing except to know that you and your children have water without you killing yourself to get it. My name is Isaac Morrison. I work at the Double M Ranch, which borders your property to the east. I know about wells and I know about digging. Give me permission and I will start tomorrow." "I cannot pay you. I am not asking for payment." Penelope studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing the offer against her pride, her need against her fear of being indebted. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right, but I will find some way to repay you, Mr. Morrison." "I do not accept charity." "It is not charity, madam. It is neighborly help, and you can call me Isaac." He picked up his canteen again and set it on the table beside the bed. "I am going to ride back to the ranch and get some supplies. I will bring back water and some food for you and the children. Do not even think about going to that creek today. Promise me." "I promise," Penelope said softly. "And my name is Penelope. These are my children, Mary and Samuel." Isaac tipped his hat to the children who were watching him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Pleased to meet you both. I will be back before dark." He paused at the door. "And Penelope, you are not alone anymore." The ride back to the Double M Ranch took Isaac 20 minutes, and his mind raced the entire way. He had been working for the ranch owner, William McCready, for 5 years now, and they had a good relationship built on mutual respect and hard work. William was a fair man who believed in helping neighbors, and Isaac hoped that belief would extend to lending out some supplies and giving Isaac some time to work on the well. When he reached the main ranch house, he found William sitting on the porch going over ledgers, his weathered face creased in concentration. The older man looked up as Isaac dismounted, and his expression shifted to concern. "You look like you have seen a ghost. What happened?" Isaac explained the situation quickly, his words tumbling out faster than usual. I know I am asking for a lot, but that woman is going to work herself to death trying to keep her children alive. If I can get a well dug at her place, it might make the difference between her making it and losing everything. William set down his ledger and leaned back in his chair, studying Isaac with keen blue eyes. You sweet on this widow woman? The question caught Isaac off guard. I barely know her. I have seen her around town a few times, watched her struggle with those water buckets. Today I watched her collapse. This is not about romance. This is about doing what is right. Doing what is right, William repeated, a small smile playing at his lips. That has always been your way, has it not? All right, Isaac. You can use the ranch equipment and take what supplies you need. I will even spare you from your regular duties for the next couple of weeks so you can focus on this project. But I want you to think about something. He stood and walked to the edge of the porch. That woman is going to need more help than just a well. Her husband is dead, she has got 2 little ones to feed, and from what I hear around town, she is behind on her land payments. A well is a good start, but it is not going to solve all her problems. One problem at a time, Isaac said. Right now, water is the most pressing issue. William nodded. Fair enough. Go get what you need from the barn, and Isaac, take some food from the kitchen too. Clara just made bread this morning and we have got plenty to spare. Isaac felt gratitude wash over him. Thank you, sir. I will make sure this does not interfere with my work here. I know you will. You are the most reliable hand I have ever had. Now get going before it gets too late. Isaac spent the next hour gathering supplies. He loaded a wagon with barrels of fresh water, bags of flour and cornmeal, dried meat, fresh vegetables from the ranch garden, and the bread Clara had insisted on wrapping up for the children. He also packed his well-digging equipment, tools he had used before when helping establish water sources on various parts of the ranch. The sun was getting lower in the sky by the time he headed back toward Penelope's homestead, the wagon creaking under the weight of supplies. The children saw him coming first and ran out to meet him, their faces lighting up with excitement. Penelope emerged from the cabin more slowly, and Isaac could see she had used the time to rest. She looked steadier on her feet, though still pale and drawn. Her eyes widened when she saw everything he had brought. This is too much, she said immediately. I told you I cannot pay for all this. And I told you this is not about payment, Isaac replied, climbing down from the wagon. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. When you get back on your feet, you can help someone else who needs it. That is how communities survive out here. He started unloading the water barrels. Where do you want these? Penelope directed him to place the barrels near the cabin door, and he could see her blinking back tears as he unloaded the food. Mary and Samuel were practically dancing with excitement at the sight of fresh bread and vegetables. It broke his heart a little to realize how little they must have been getting by on. Mary, Samuel, can you help me carry these lighter things inside? Isaac asked, wanting to give Penelope a moment to compose herself. The children eagerly grabbed what they could manage, and he followed them into the cabin with the heavier items. As he set down the bags of flour and cornmeal, he noticed the children eyeing the bread with barely contained hunger. Go ahead, he said with a smile. I think your mama would not mind if you each had a piece now. Penelope had followed them inside, and she nodded permission. The children descended on the bread with the intensity of those who knew real hunger, and Isaac had to look away from the sight. He had grown up poor himself, had known days when meals were scarce, but seeing it in children never got easier. Thank you, Penelope said quietly, standing beside him. You have no idea what this means to us. I have got some idea, Isaac replied. He turned to face her fully. noting the proud set of her shoulders despite her circumstances. "Tomorrow, I will start surveying for the best place to dig the well. I will need to test the soil and see where the water table is closest to the surface. It will probably take me a week or two to get it done, working in the mornings and evenings when the heat is not so bad. You have your own work at the ranch. Mr. McCready gave me leave to help you. He is a good man who believes in taking care of neighbors." Isaac paused, choosing his words carefully. "I know you value your independence, Penelope, and I respect that. But out here, we all need each other sometimes. There is no shame in accepting help when you need it." She looked at him for a long moment, her hazel eyes searching his face as if trying to determine his true motives. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "You are right, and I am grateful, more than I can say. I have been so focused on proving I can do this alone that I have been risking my children's well-being. That is pride talking, and pride is a luxury I cannot afford." "It is not just pride," Isaac said gently. "It is strength. You have been doing the impossible all by yourself for months. But even the strongest people need help sometimes." Samuel tugged on Isaac's sleeve, his small face smeared with bread crumbs. "Mister, are you going to stay for supper? Mama makes good stew." Isaac glanced at Penelope, not wanting to impose but also not wanting to refuse the child. She smiled, a real smile this time that transformed her tired face into something radiant. "Please stay. It is the least I can do, and I would enjoy the company. It has been just the three of us for so long." "Then I would be honored," Isaac said. He had intended to head back to the ranch before full dark, but something about this small family had grabbed hold of his heart, and he found himself wanting to stay in their presence a little longer. Penelope moved to the small stove and began preparing supper with the supplies Isaac had brought. He watched as she worked, her movements efficient and practiced despite her earlier exhaustion. Mary helped by setting the table, carefully placing the mismatched plates and utensils with the seriousness of a child given an important task. Samuel stuck close to Isaac, looking up at him with open curiosity. "Did you know my papa?" the boy asked suddenly. "No, I am afraid not," Isaac said, crouching down to be at eye level with the child. "But I have heard he was a good man who worked hard for his family." "He got sick," Samuel said matter-of-factly. "Mama tried to make him better, but he died anyway. She cried a lot." "I am sure she did. Losing someone you love is one of the hardest things in the world." Mary joined them, her expression more guarded than her brother's. "Are you going to marry our mama?" she asked bluntly. "Mary," Penelope turned from the stove, her cheeks flushing red. "That is not an appropriate question." "But that is what Mrs. Henderson said in town," Mary continued, undeterred. "She said Mama would have to marry again soon or lose the homestead, and that no decent man would want a woman with 2 children. Isaac felt anger flash through him at the casual cruelty of such words spoken where a child could hear them. He kept his voice gentle when he responded. "Well, Mrs. Henderson does not know what she is talking about. Your mama is doing a fine job taking care of you, and any man would be lucky to have a family like yours." He stood and met Penelope's eyes across the room. "I am here to help because it is the right thing to do, not because I expect anything in return. Your mama is strong and capable, and once we get this well dug, she will be able to keep this homestead running just fine." Penelope held his gaze for a moment, and he could see gratitude mixed with something else he could not quite name in her expression. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Supper was a simple affair, but it felt like a feast after the meager rations the family had been surviving on. Penelope had made a hearty stew using the vegetables and dried meat Isaac had brought, and the children ate with enthusiasm. The conversation flowed more easily as the meal progressed, and Isaac found himself genuinely enjoying the company. Penelope was intelligent and well-spoken, and he learned that she and Thomas had come to Arizona Territory from Missouri 3 years ago, hoping to build a better life. Thomas was a dreamer, Penelope said, a wistful smile on her face. He saw this land and imagined orchards and cattle and a house twice this size. I loved him for those dreams, even when I knew they were probably impossible. She looked around the small cabin. After he died, I thought about going back to Missouri. My sister lives there with her husband. But this land is all I have left of Thomas's dreams. I wanted to prove I could make it work for him and for our children. That is admirable, Isaac said, and you still can make it work. This is good land, even if it is hard land. With a reliable water source, you could expand that garden, maybe get a few chickens, even a milk cow eventually. That sounds wonderful, Penelope said, but her expression was doubtful. But it all takes money, and money is something I have precious little of. Isaac wanted to offer more help, wanted to solve all her problems at once, but he knew better than to push too hard too fast. The well was a start. Once that was done, maybe he could help her figure out ways to make the homestead more profitable. But those were thoughts for another day. As the evening drew to a close, Isaac helped Penelope clean up from supper while the children played with some wooden toys in the corner. The domestic simplicity of it struck him with unexpected force. He had never been one to think much about marriage and family, had been too focused on saving money and building a future. But standing in this small cabin, watching Penelope dry dishes with careful precision, he felt something shift inside him. "I should head back to the ranch," he said reluctantly as the last dish was put away. "I will be back tomorrow morning to start surveying for the well. Is there anything else you need before I go?" Penelope shook her head. "You have already done so much. I do not know how to thank you properly." "No thanks needed. Just promise me you will rest tonight and not even think about going to that creek tomorrow." "I promise. The water you brought will last us several days if we are careful." Isaac called goodbyes to the children and headed out to his wagon. The night had settled in fully now, stars spread across the sky in a brilliant display that never failed to humble him. As he climbed onto the wagon seat, Penelope followed him outside. "Isaac," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "why are you really doing this? You do not know me." "You owe me nothing." He considered the question carefully, wanting to give her an honest answer. "I watched my own mother work herself to death after my father was killed in the war. I was too young then to help her, too small to make any difference. When I saw you fall today, I saw her. I saw someone strong and brave who was carrying more than anyone should have to carry alone. Maybe I am doing this for her as much as for you. Maybe I am doing it because it is the right thing to do. Does the reason matter so much? I suppose not," Penelope said. "But I want you to know that it matters to me. You could have just ridden past today. Most people would have. But you stopped and you helped and you are still helping. That makes you a rare kind of man, Isaac Morrison." He felt heat rise to his face at her words. "Get some rest, Penelope. I will see you tomorrow." The ride back to the ranch gave Isaac plenty of time to think. He had meant what he said about seeing his mother in Penelope, but there was more to it than that. There was something about the young widow that drew him, something beyond her obvious need for help. She had a quiet strength that he admired, a determination that spoke to something deep in his own character. And her children, despite their hardships, still had light in their eyes and love in their hearts. That spoke to the kind of mother Penelope was. When he reached the ranch, he found William still up, sitting on the porch with a glass of whiskey and his pipe. The older man raised an eyebrow as Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop. "You are back late." "I stayed for supper," Isaac admitted, climbing down from the wagon. "The children invited me." "The children," William repeated with a knowing smile. "Well, that was neighborly of you. How bad is the situation over there?" "Bad enough. She has been making do with almost nothing, and those kids are half-starved. But she has pride and strength, and with a little help, I think she can make it." "And you intend to be the one giving that help?" Isaac met his employer's gaze steadily. "Yes, sir, I do." William puffed on his pipe, studying Isaac thoughtfully. "There are worse things a man could do with his time than helping a widow and her children. Just be careful, Isaac. Feelings can get complicated in situations like this. You might start out thinking you are just being helpful and end up in deeper waters than you planned." "I will be careful," Isaac promised, though something told him it might already be too late for that. The next morning, Isaac was at Penelope's homestead shortly after sunrise, when the air was still relatively cool. He found her already up, hanging laundry on a line strung between two posts. She looked better rested than the day before, and she greeted him with a warm smile that did strange things to his heartbeat. "You are an early riser," she observed. "Best time to work in this heat. Where do you usually get your water from the creek? Show me the spot." Penelope led him down the path she walked multiple times each day, and Isaac studied the land carefully as they went. The terrain was rocky and uneven, typical of this part of Arizona territory, but he could see signs that water was not too far below the surface. There were certain plants that only grew where the water table was high, and he spotted several of them as they walked. At the creek, he knelt and examined the flow. It was a decent stream, fed by springs higher in the hills, but he could see it was already lower than it should be for this time of year. Another month or two and it might dry up completely. "Have you ever seen this creek run dry?" he asked. "Last summer it got very low," Penelope said. "There were a few weeks where we had to walk further upstream to find enough water to fill the buckets. That is when Thomas started talking about needing a well, but we never had the money to hire someone to dig one." Isaac nodded, his mind already working on the problem. "I think I can find water closer to your cabin. There are signs that the water table is not too deep. It will still be hard work, but it is doable." He stood and brushed off his hands. "Let me go back and do some tests. I will need to check a few different spots to find the best location." They walked back to the homestead together, and Isaac found himself hyper-aware of Penelope's presence beside him. She moved with an easy grace despite the obvious hardships she had endured, and he caught himself stealing glances at her profile when he thought she was not looking. She caught him once, and a faint blush colored her cheeks, but she did not say anything. Back at the cabin, Isaac spent the next several hours surveying different locations. He used a dowsing rod, a skill an old prospector had taught him years ago, and tested the soil in various spots. The children followed him around like curious puppies, asking endless questions about what he was doing and why. Penelope brought him water and watched his progress, occasionally offering observations about the land that proved surprisingly insightful. "Thomas and I used to talk about every inch of this property," she explained when Isaac commented on her knowledge. "We would plan where to put buildings, where to plant trees, where the best grazing would be. I know it sounds silly, but those conversations were some of my favorite times with him." "It does not sound silly at all," Isaac said. "It sounds like you two were partners in the truest sense." "We were," Penelope said softly. "I miss that. I miss having someone to plan with, to dream with." "The children are wonderful, but they are too young to understand all the worries and responsibilities. Sometimes I feel so alone I can barely breathe." Isaac paused in his work to look at her fully. The vulnerability in her admission touched him deeply. "You do not have to be alone," he said carefully. I know I am just a ranch hand you barely know, but I would like to be your friend if you will have me. Someone you can talk to when the worries get too heavy." Penelope's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I would like that very much." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. It was Mary who broke the spell, running up with a lizard she had caught and demanding that they all admire it. The tension dissolved into laughter, and Isaac returned to his surveying with a lighter heart. By midday, he had identified the perfect spot for the well. It was about 30 feet from the cabin door, close enough to be convenient but far enough that there would be no risk of water damage to the structure. The soil tests indicated water at about 40 feet down, which was deeper than he would have liked but still manageable. "This is the spot," he announced, marking it with a stake. "I will start digging tomorrow. Today I need to get back to the ranch and prepare the equipment." "Will you stay for lunch before you go?" Penelope asked. "It is not much, but I made bread this morning." Isaac agreed readily, finding that he was reluctant to leave the small homestead. Lunch was simple but pleasant, and he found himself telling stories that made the children laugh and brought smiles to Penelope's face. He told them about his adventures working cattle, about the time a stubborn bull had chased him up a tree, and he had to wait there for 3 hours until help arrived. He told them about the beautiful wild horses he had seen running free in the hills, and about the night sky during roundup when he slept under the stars. "You like working at the ranch?" Mary asked. "I do," Isaac said honestly. "Mr. McCready is a good man to work for, and I have learned a lot in my years there. But someday I would like to have my own place. Nothing big, just enough land to run some cattle and maybe grow some crops. A place that is mine." "That was Thomas's dream too," Penelope said quietly. This homestead was supposed to be the start of something bigger. He wanted to prove he could make it here, then expand gradually over the years. She looked around at the small cabin and the sparse land around it. "I suppose I should let go of those dreams now. Just keeping what we have is challenge enough. Dreams do not have to die just because circumstances change," Isaac said. "They might need to shift a bit, adapt to new realities, but the core of them can survive. You could still build something here, Penelope. It might take longer than you and Thomas planned, and it might look different than what you imagined, but it is possible. You sound very certain about that. I have seen people overcome worse odds, and I have never met anyone with more determination than you." He stood reluctantly. "I really should get back now. There is equipment I need to prepare for tomorrow." As Isaac prepared to leave, Samuel ran up and hugged his legs. "Will you come back tomorrow for sure?" "I promise," Isaac said, ruffling the boy's hair. "I will be here bright and early to start digging your well." "Good," Samuel said seriously. "I like you. You should come every day." Isaac caught Penelope's eye over the child's head and saw her blushing again. "I like you too, Samuel, and I will be here as often as I can until the well is finished." That night, back in his small room in the ranch bunkhouse, Isaac found himself thinking about Penelope and her children instead of sleeping. He thought about her smile, about the way she listened intently when he spoke, about the strength it must have taken to keep going after losing her husband. He thought about Mary's direct questions and Samuel's easy affection. He thought about the way it felt to sit at their table, to be part of their small family circle even temporarily. William had warned him about getting in too deep, but Isaac suspected he was already there. Somewhere between watching Penelope collapse and eating lunch with her children, his heart had started making decisions his head had not authorized. He was falling for her, and he knew it, even if it terrified him. The question was what to do about it. Penelope was still grieving her husband, still struggling just to survive each day. The last thing she needed was complications from a cowboy who had showed up to help her. Isaac resolved to keep his growing feelings to himself, to be the friend she needed without burdening her with emotions she was not ready to handle. It was a good plan. It was the right plan. But as Isaac finally drifted off to sleep, his dreams were full of hazel eyes and grateful smiles, and he wondered how long he could really keep his heart in check. The next morning, Isaac arrived at the homestead with a wagon full of well-digging equipment. He had a pickaxe, several shovels, wooden planks for shoring up the well walls, a pulley system for hauling dirt out once the hole got deep, and buckets for the same purpose. Penelope came out to greet him, and he noticed she had taken extra care with her appearance. Her hair was neatly pinned, and she wore a clean dress that highlighted the curve of her waist. "You look nice," he said without thinking, then immediately felt foolish, but Penelope smiled, a pleased expression crossing her features. "Thank you. I thought since you are doing all this work for us, the least I could do is look presentable." "You always look presentable," Isaac said honestly, "but I appreciate the thought." He set to work immediately, marking out the circumference of the well and beginning to dig. The work was back-breaking even in the early morning cool, and Isaac quickly stripped down to just his undershirt. The soil was rocky and hard-packed, resisting every bite of the shovel, but he had expected that. This was desert land, and nothing came easy here. Penelope brought him water regularly, along with encouragement. The children played nearby, occasionally bringing him interesting rocks they found or asking if he had reached water yet. By midday, Isaac had dug down about 6 feet, and his muscles were screaming in protest. He climbed out of the hole to take a break, and Penelope handed him a plate of food. "You do not have to push yourself so hard," she said, concern evident in her voice. "This well will still be here tomorrow." "I know, but I want to make as much progress as I can while I have the time," Isaac said between bites. The food was simple but good, and he realized Penelope had a talent for making meager ingredients into something satisfying. "Besides, the sooner we get this done, the sooner you can stop worrying about water." "I have not stopped worrying in so long I am not sure I would know how," Penelope admitted. She sat down near where he was resting, her skirts pooling around her. "But having you here helps. It feels less lonely somehow." Isaac wanted to reach out and take her hand, wanted to tell her she never had to feel lonely again, but he restrained himself. Instead, he said, "Tell me about Missouri. What was it like there?" Penelope's face softened with memory. "Green. So green you could hardly believe it. Trees everywhere, and rain that came regular as clockwork. My family had a farm there, nothing fancy but enough to get by. Thomas worked for my father, and that is how we met." He was always talking about the opportunities out west, about land for the taking and fortunes to be made. He was so passionate about it that he convinced me to marry him and come to Arizona Territory. She smiled sadly. "I have not regretted it, even with everything that has happened." "This land gets into your blood somehow." "It does," Isaac agreed. "I came here from Texas 5 years ago, thought I would work for a year or two, save up some money and move on, but something about this territory kept me here. Maybe it is the challenge of it, the way you have to fight for every little victory, makes those victories sweeter somehow." "That is a good way to look at it," Penelope said. "I try to see it that way too, though some days it is harder than others." They talked for a while longer, sharing stories about their pasts and their hopes for the future. Isaac learned that Penelope loved to read, but had not been able to afford books in years. She learned that Isaac could play the harmonica and used to entertain the other ranch hands on long cattle drives. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, and Isaac found himself sharing things he rarely talked about with anyone. When he returned to digging, he did so with renewed energy. The hours passed in a rhythm of sweat and effort, dirt flying up from the growing hole. By the time the sun started its descent toward the horizon, Isaac had made it down to 12 feet. His hands were blistered and his back ached, but he felt a sense of satisfaction in the progress. Penelope insisted he stay for supper again, and Isaac did not have the willpower to refuse. The evening meal was becoming something he looked forward to, a peaceful interlude where he could be part of something that felt like family. After the children were put to bed, Penelope walked with him out to his wagon. "Isaac," she said softly, "I have been thinking about what you said yesterday about being friends. I want you to know how much that means to me. I have not had a real friend in a long time. Most of the women in Clifton Hill treat me with either pity or suspicion, and the men see me as either a burden or an opportunity. You are the first person in months who has treated me like a regular human being. You deserve to be treated with respect," Isaac said firmly. "You deserve to have people in your life who see your strength and value, not just your circumstances." "Well, you see it," Penelope said, stepping closer to him, "and I am grateful for that, more grateful than I can express." They stood there in the growing darkness, so close Isaac could see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. The air between them felt charged with possibility, and he could feel his resolve to keep things simple wavering. But then Penelope stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "I should let you go," she said. "You must be exhausted." "I will be back tomorrow," Isaac promised, "and the next day and the day after that until this well is done." "I believe you," Penelope said, and the trust in her voice warmed him more than any fire could. The days fell into a pattern after that. Isaac would arrive early, work on the well until the heat became unbearable, take a break during the hottest part of the day, and then return to work in the evening. Penelope would bring him food and water, and they would talk during his breaks. The children treated him like part of the family, and Isaac found himself growing attached to them. Mary was serious and thoughtful, often asking questions that showed wisdom beyond her 6 years. She talked about her father with a matter-of-fact acceptance of his death that broke Isaac's heart. Samuel was more carefree, quick to laugh and always finding adventures in the smallest things. Both children were clearly loved and well cared for despite their poverty, which spoke volumes about Penelope's character. As the well grew deeper, Isaac had to set up the pulley system to haul dirt out. Penelope helped him with this, proving herself to be strong and capable. They worked together seamlessly, and Isaac was impressed by her willingness to get her hands dirty. She was not content to just watch him work. She wanted to be part of the solution. "Thomas taught me that the only way to make it out here is to never be afraid of hard work," she explained when Isaac commented on her efforts. "He said that giving up was the only real failure, and I have tried to remember that every day since he died." "He sounds like he was a wise man," Isaac said. "He was. Not educated in a formal sense, but smart about life and people. I wish you could have known him. I think you two would have gotten along well." Isaac thought about that as he worked. Would Thomas have approved of him being here, helping his widow? Would he have seen Isaac's growing feelings for Penelope as a betrayal or as a blessing? These were questions Isaac could never have answered, but they weighed on his mind nonetheless. On the 5th day of digging, at 35 feet down, Isaac's shovel hit something different. The soil was suddenly damp, and he felt a surge of excitement. "I think we are getting close," he called up to Penelope, who was manning the pulley. "Really? Are you sure? The soil is wet." "Water cannot be far now." He dug more carefully now, and within a few more feet, water began to seep into the bottom of the well. By the end of that day, there was a foot of clear, clean water pooled at the bottom. Isaac climbed out of the well muddy and exhausted but triumphant. Penelope was waiting at the top, and when she saw his face, She let out a cry of joy. Without thinking, she threw her arms around him in a tight hug. Isaac froze for a moment, surprised, then wrapped his arms around her in return. She was warm and soft against him, and she smelled like sunshine and bread, and for a moment the world narrowed down to just the two of them. Then Penelope seemed to realize what she had done and pulled back, her cheeks flushed. "I am sorry. I got carried away. I just cannot believe we actually have water right here." "Do not apologize," Isaac said, his voice rougher than usual. "I understand. This is a big moment." The children came running, having heard their mother's exclamation, and they all peered down into the well at the water below. Mary was practically bouncing with excitement, and Samuel wanted to climb down immediately to see it up close. Isaac laughed and pulled the boy back from the edge. "Not yet, little man. We still have work to do. I need to shore up the walls properly and build a cover for the top to keep debris out. Then we need to install a pump mechanism so you can actually get the water up. But the hard part is done. You have got a well." Penelope's eyes were shining with unshed tears. "I cannot believe this is real. For months I have been hauling water from that creek, thinking it would never end. And now we have water right outside our door." "You have got water right outside your door," Isaac corrected gently. "This is your well, Penelope, your water. You never have to make that walk again." That night's supper was a celebration. Penelope had used some of her precious supplies to make a special meal, and the children were giddy with excitement about the well. Isaac found himself caught up in their joy, feeling a sense of accomplishment deeper than anything he had felt working at the ranch. After the children were asleep, Penelope and Isaac sat outside on the cabin steps, looking up at the stars. The night air was cool and pleasant after the heat of the day, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. "I have been thinking," Penelope said quietly, "about what happens next. The well solves one problem, but I still have others. The land payment is due in 6 weeks, and I do not have nearly enough money saved." "How much do you need?" Isaac asked, though he was fairly certain he knew the answer. $200. "I have managed to save 37 through selling things and taking in some mending work from town. But that still leaves me short by a lot." Isaac's own savings amounted to about $300, money he had been carefully putting away for years toward his dream of owning his own land. He could give her what she needed and still have enough left over to start rebuilding his savings. But he knew Penelope well enough by now to know she would never accept that kind of help. "What if you could make the money yourself?" he asked slowly, an idea forming. "You said you take in mending work. What if you could expand that? Maybe offer other services too? Baking, laundry, anything you are good at." "I have thought about that, but the problem is getting the word out and having enough customers. Most women in Clifton Hill do their own mending and baking. The ones who do not already have regular arrangements with other women." "What about the ranches? There are a dozen ranches in this area, all full of cowboys who would pay good money for home-cooked meals and mended clothes. Most of us eat beans and bacon every day and wear clothes with more patches than original fabric." Isaac was warming to the idea now. "I could spread the word at the Double M, and I know men at other ranches too. If you could provide services once or twice a week, take in batches of mending and sell baked goods, you might be able to make up the difference." Penelope was quiet for a moment, considering. "That could work," she said slowly. "I could bake extra bread and maybe some pies. I could take in mending and do laundry. It would be hard work fitting it in with everything else, but I am not afraid of hard work. I know you are not, and I will help however I can. I can deliver your goods to the ranches when I make my rounds, collect payment, bring you more work. We can make this work, Penelope." She turned to look at him, her face pale in the starlight. "Why are you doing all this, And please do not just say it is being neighborly. Building a well is neighborly. This is something more, and I need to understand what it is." Isaac took a deep breath, knowing this was a moment of truth. He could deflect, could give her some easy answer that would not complicate things. But Penelope deserved honesty. "Because somewhere along the way, you and your children have become important to me, more important than I expected. I care about what happens to you, and I want to see you succeed. I want to be part of your life in whatever way you will have me." "Isaac," Penelope whispered, and he could hear the emotion in her voice. "I care about you too. These past few days have been some of the best I have had since Thomas died. You make me laugh. You make me feel capable and strong. You make me feel like maybe I can actually do this. But I am scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of feeling too much too soon. Scared of disappointing you or failing again. Scared that maybe what we feel is just gratitude and proximity and not something real." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Thomas has only been gone 3 months. Sometimes I feel guilty for being happy when you are around, like I am betraying his memory." Isaac understood her fear, recognized the validity of her concerns. "I am scared too," he admitted. "I have never felt like this about anyone, and it is terrifying. But I also know that what I feel for you is real. It is not just gratitude or convenience. It is you, Penelope. Your strength, your kindness, your determination, the way you love your children, the way you face each day even when it would be easier to give up. That is what I care about." "I do not want you to think I am using you," Penelope said. "That I am accepting your help because I need a man to take care of me. I know that is not why. You have made it clear from the start that you can take care of yourself, but that does not mean you have to do it alone." Isaac shifted to face her more fully. "I am not asking you to marry me or make any kind of commitment. I am just asking for a chance. Let me keep helping you. Let me keep being part of your life. And maybe when you are ready, we can see if this connection between us is something worth exploring." Penelope studied his face for a long moment, and then she nodded slowly. "All right. We can take it slow, see what develops. But I need you to promise me something, anything. Promise me that if you start to feel like this is not what you want, you will tell me. Do not stay out of obligation or pity. I could not bear that, I promise, and I need the same promise from you." "You have it," Penelope said. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm in his. "Thank you, Isaac, for everything." They sat there for a while longer, hands clasped, looking up at the stars. It was not a declaration of love or a commitment to a future together, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. Over the next week, Isaac finished the well completely. He built sturdy walls using stone and mortar, installed a pump mechanism that made drawing water easy even for the children, and constructed a wooden cover to protect the opening. When it was done, he stood back with Penelope and admired their work. "It is perfect," she breathed. "I cannot believe this is real." "Believe it," Isaac said with a grin. "Go ahead, try it out." Penelope worked the pump handle, and after a few strokes, clear water gushed out into the bucket below. She laughed with pure delight, and the children clapped their hands in excitement. Mary wanted to try pumping the water herself, and Isaac showed her how to work the handle. Samuel was more interested in splashing in the overflow, getting his clothes soaked in the process. "Now you can expand that garden," Isaac pointed out. "With easy access to water, you could triple its size. Maybe even set up some irrigation channels." "I will start tomorrow," Penelope said decisively. "And I will begin baking extra bread and pies for the ranch orders. You really think the Cowboys will buy from me? I know they will. I have already mentioned it to some of the boys at the Double M, and they are excited at the prospect of real home cooking. And once word spreads, you will have more customers than you can handle." Isaac's prediction proved accurate. Within days, Penelope had orders from multiple ranches for baked goods, mending, and laundry services. She worked from before sunrise until well after dark, but there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. It was the light of hope, of seeing a path forward. Isaac helped however he could, making deliveries and pickups during his work for the Double M. He also started spending his evenings at Penelope's homestead, helping her with tasks around the property. He repaired the roof where it leaked, fixed the fence around the garden, and reinforced the walls of the cabin against the coming winter. They fell into an easy partnership, working side by side, and the connection between them deepened with each passing day. The physical attraction was there, undeniable and growing stronger, but they both kept it in check. Isaac would catch himself watching the way Penelope tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, or the way her face lit up when she smiled, and he would have to look away before his thoughts went too far. Penelope would sometimes touch his arm when they talked, her hand lingering just a moment longer than necessary, and he could see the awareness in her eyes. But they kept things appropriate, mindful of her mourning and her reputation. In a small town like Clifton Hill, gossip spread faster than wildfire, and the last thing Penelope needed was people talking about her improper behavior. Isaac made sure to leave before dark most nights, and when he did stay for supper, he was always careful to maintain proper distance. The children, oblivious to the unspoken tension between the adults, grew more attached to Isaac with each visit. Samuel started calling him Mr. Isaac and would run to greet him whenever he arrived. Mary was more reserved, but Isaac could see her warming up to him. She asked him questions about his work and listened intently to his answers, and one day she shyly showed him a drawing she had made of the well. "This is wonderful," Isaac said, genuinely impressed by the detail the 6-year-old had captured. "You have real talent, Mary. You really think so?" She asked, her face flushing with pleasure. "I really do. You should keep drawing. Maybe someday you will be a famous artist." Mary smiled, a rare, full smile that transformed her serious little face. "Papa used to say that too. He said I could be anything I wanted if I worked hard enough." "Your papa was right," Isaac said gently, "and I am sure he would be very proud of you." It was small moments like these that made Isaac realize he was not just falling for Penelope. He was falling for her entire family, for the life they were building together. The thought of not being part of their daily existence had become painful to contemplate. One evening, about 3 weeks after the well was completed, Isaac arrived at the homestead to find Penelope sitting on the steps with her head in her hands. The children were nowhere to be seen, and he could hear their voices inside the cabin. He immediately knew something was wrong. "Penelope, what is it? What happened?" She looked up at him, and he could see tears tracking down her cheeks. "I counted the money today. All the earnings from the baking and mending. Even with everything I had saved before, I am still $60 short for the land payment, and I only have 2 weeks left to come up with it." Isaac felt his heart sink. Penelope had been working so hard, had been so hopeful, and to come up short after all that effort was devastating. "We will figure something out," he said, sitting down beside her. "Maybe we can find more customers, or maybe you could sell something. I have already sold everything of value except my wedding ring, and I will not part with that. It is all I have left of Thomas." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I have been so foolish, thinking I could actually do this. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe a widow with 2 children has no business trying to run a homestead alone." "Stop that," Isaac said firmly. "You are not foolish, and you are not a failure. You have done the impossible already. You have kept your family fed and safe and together despite everything. This is just one more obstacle, and we will find a way around it." "How?" Where am I going to find $60 in 2 weeks? Isaac knew what he had to do, even though he knew Penelope would resist. I have savings, more than enough to cover what you need. No, Penelope said immediately, just as he had expected. Absolutely not. That is your money, your dream of owning your own land. I cannot take that from you. You would not be taking it, I would be giving it. And it is not like I would be handing it over for nothing. You could pay me back over time with interest if you want. Consider it a loan from a friend. Isaac, I cannot. It is too much. It is not too much if it means you and the children get to keep your home. Penelope, I have been saving for years, and I can keep saving for more years. But you do not have years. You have 2 weeks. Let me help you. She looked at him with such a mixture of gratitude and despair that it nearly broke his heart. Why would you do this? Risk your own dreams for mine. Because your dreams have become my dreams, Isaac said simply. Because when I think about my future, I see you in it. I see Mary and Samuel. I see this homestead thriving and growing. That is what I want, Penelope. Not just some abstract piece of land somewhere, but this. You. Penelope's breath caught and she stared at him with wide eyes. Isaac, are you saying what I think you are saying? I love you, Isaac said, finally giving voice to the truth that had been growing in his heart for weeks. I know it is fast, and I know you are still mourning Thomas, and I know this might not be what you want to hear right now, but I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you care for your children and the way you face each challenge with courage. I love you, and I want to be part of your life in every way you will let me. Tears were streaming down Penelope's face now, but she was smiling through them. I love you too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was too soon and too complicated, but I cannot help it. You have become so important to me, Isaac. When I wake up in the morning, my first thought is whether you will be coming by that day. When I go to sleep at night, I think about the conversations we had and the way you make me laugh. You make me feel alive again in a way I had not thought possible. Isaac reached out and cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. Then let me help you. Let me give you this money so you can keep your home, and then, when you are ready, maybe we can talk about a future together. I am ready now, Penelope said, leaning into his touch. I have been ready for days, maybe weeks. I was just too scared to admit it, but I do not want to be scared anymore. I want to be brave enough to reach for happiness when it is right in front of me. Are you sure? I do not want you to feel rushed or pressured. I am sure, Penelope said firmly. Thomas will always have a place in my heart. He was my first love and he gave me 2 beautiful children. But he is gone and I am still here. I have to live, Isaac, and I want to live with you. Isaac felt his heart soar at her words. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but she met him halfway. Their lips touched in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened into something more passionate. It was a kiss full of promise and hope, and the kind of love that could build a future. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I will take care of you, he promised. You and Mary and Samuel. I will work hard and provide for you, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life. I know you will, Penelope said. But I want you to know that I am not looking for someone to take care of me. I want a partner, someone to build a life with, someone to share the work and the dreams and everything in between. That is exactly what I want too, Isaac assured her. We will be partners in every sense of the word. They sat there on the steps for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, talking about their future. They talked about expanding the homestead, about the possibility of raising cattle or horses, about giving Mary and Samuel the kind of stable, loving home every child deserved. They talked about marriage, though they agreed to wait a few months to make it official. both to respect the proper mourning period and to give the children time to adjust to the idea. When Isaac finally left that night, it was with a light heart and a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He was going to build a life with Penelope and her children, was going to turn that small homestead into a real home. The dream of his own land had not died. It had simply evolved into something better than he had imagined. The next day, Isaac withdrew $60 from his savings at the bank in Clifton Hill and brought it to Penelope. She accepted it with tears in her eyes and a promise to pay him back as soon as she was able. They sat down together and worked out the terms of the loan, writing everything down to make it official. It felt strange to be conducting business with the woman he loved, but it was also important to both of them that everything be proper and above board. "I will start paying you back $5 a month," Penelope said. "It will take a year to repay everything, but I should be able to manage that with the baking and mending business." "There is no rush," Isaac said. "Take whatever time you need." "And Penelope, if we do get married, all of this becomes moot anyway. What is mine will be yours, and what is yours will be mine." "When we get married," Penelope corrected with a smile. "Not if. When." The land payment was made with a week to spare, and Penelope cried with relief when she received the receipt confirming another year of ownership. The homestead was safe, and with the well providing easy access to water, the future looked brighter than it had in months. Isaac started spending more time at the homestead, helping Penelope expand her business and improve the property. They worked together to build a larger chicken coop and purchased a dozen laying hens. The eggs provided both food for the family and a product Penelope could sell in town. They also acquired a milk cow, which meant fresh milk and butter, another source of income. The garden flourished with reliable irrigation from the well, producing more vegetables than the family could eat. Penelope started selling the surplus at the general store in Clifton Hill, adding to her slowly growing savings. The hard work was paying off, and with Isaac's help and support, the homestead was transforming into a viable operation. The children adjusted to Isaac's increasing presence in their lives with enthusiasm. Samuel took to following Isaac around like a shadow, wanting to help with every task. Isaac was patient with the boy, teaching him about caring for the animals and maintaining the property. He could see Thomas and Samuel's serious approach to learning, and it made him more determined to be a good role model for the child. Mary remained more reserved, but Isaac could see her warming up to him gradually. One day, she brought him a new drawing, this one showing the entire homestead with all its improvements. She had drawn Isaac working on the well, Penelope tending the garden, and the children playing nearby. It was a picture of a family, and it moved Isaac deeply. "This is beautiful, Mary," he said, studying the drawing carefully. "You really captured everything." "Do you notice anything special about it?" Mary asked, watching his face. Isaac looked more closely and realized that in the drawing, he and Penelope were standing close together, their hands almost touching. It was a child's subtle way of showing what she saw developing between them. "I do notice," he said gently. "And I want you to know that I care about your mother very much. I care about you and Samuel too. If things continue the way they are going, I might become part of your family in a more permanent way. How would you feel about that?" Mary was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I miss Papa," she said finally. "I miss him every day, but I know he is not coming back, and I know Mama needs help. She pretends to be strong all the time, but sometimes I hear her crying at night when she thinks we are asleep." She looked up at Isaac with eyes far too wise for her age. "You make her happy. She does not cry at night anymore when you have been here during the day, so I think it would be good if you stayed. Papa would want someone to take care of Mama and us, and I think he would like you." Isaac felt emotion clog his throat. He knelt down to be at Mary's level. "Thank you for telling me that. And I promise you, I will always honor your father's memory. He will always be your papa, and nothing will ever change that. But I would be honored to be part of your family and to help take care of you and your mama and Samuel." Mary nodded solemnly, then surprised him by leaning in for a quick hug. It was brief, but it meant everything to Isaac. He had won over the more cautious of Penelope's children, and it felt like a significant milestone. That evening, Isaac asked William McCready for permission to leave the Double M Ranch. It was not an easy conversation, as William had been a good employer and almost a father figure to Isaac. But the older man took the news with grace. "I had been wondering when you would make this move," William said, leaning back in his chair on the ranch house porch. "Anyone with eyes could see you were serious about that widow woman and her children. Are you planning to marry her?" "Yes, sir." "In a few months, once enough time has passed to be respectful." "Good. She is a fine woman from what I hear around town, strong and hardworking. Those are good qualities in a wife." William studied Isaac thoughtfully. "What are your plans? That homestead of hers is small. Will you be able to support a family on it?" "We have plans to expand gradually. Penelope has got a good business going with her baking and mending, and the garden is producing well. I have been thinking about running some cattle on the property, just a small herd to start. Between all of that, we should be able to make it work." "What if I offered you a deal?" William said. "I have been thinking about reducing my own herd, focusing more on the horses. What if I sold you 20 head of cattle at a fair price and gave you grazing rights on a portion of my land until you can expand your own property? You could pay me back over time, and it would give you a head start on building up a herd." Isaac was stunned by the generous offer. "Sir, I do not know what to say. That is incredibly kind of you." "It is good business," William corrected. "You are a hard worker and honest, and I would rather see you succeed close by than struggle somewhere else. Besides, having a good neighbor is worth more than a few head of cattle." "What do you say?" "I say yes, and thank you," Isaac said, shaking the older man's hand firmly. "I will make sure you do not regret this." "I know you will. Now, when do you want to move those cattle over to your new property?" "As soon as possible. I want to get everything established before the wedding." The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Isaac moved his few possessions from the bunkhouse to Penelope's homestead, though he maintained propriety by sleeping in the small barn until after the wedding. The cattle were moved and settled on the property, and Isaac spent his days building up the fencing and infrastructure needed to support them. Penelope continued her baking and mending business, and together they saved every penny they could. The homestead was thriving in a way it never had before, and there was a sense of hope and possibility in the air. As fall arrived and the fierce Arizona heat began to ease, Isaac and Penelope started making plans for their wedding. It would be a simple affair at the small church in Clifton Hill, with just a few friends and neighbors in attendance. Mary would wear a new dress that Penelope had sewn from fabric they had splurged on, and Samuel would carry the rings. The night before the wedding, Penelope and Isaac sat outside together watching the stars and talking about their future. "Are you nervous?" Isaac asked, holding her hand. "A little," Penelope admitted. "Not about marrying you, I am absolutely certain about that, but about everything it represents. Starting over, building a new life, trusting in happiness again after losing so much. I understand. But I want you to know that I am in this for the long haul. Whatever challenges we face, we will face them together. I am not going anywhere, Penelope. You are stuck with me." She laughed, the sound light and joyful in the evening air. "I can think of worse fates, and Isaac, thank you. For the help, for loving me and my children. You gave us back our future when I thought we had lost it. You gave me a future worth having, Isaac replied. Before I met you, I was just drifting, working towards some vague dream that never felt quite real. But this, us, this family we are building together, this is real. This is what I want. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the October sky a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. Penelope wore a simple but elegant dress of deep blue that brought out her eyes, and Isaac wore his best suit, newly cleaned and pressed. The children were scrubbed and shining, their faces glowing with excitement. The ceremony itself was brief but heartfelt. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about the joining of two families into one, and about the blessings that come from facing life's challenges with a partner at your side. When Isaac slipped the simple gold band onto Penelope's finger, his hands were steady and his voice was sure. I take you as my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Penelope's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she repeated her own vows, but her eyes never left Isaac's face. I take you as my husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed his new bride gently, mindful of the children watching and the small crowd of well-wishers gathered in the church. It was a kiss full of promise and hope, the seal on a commitment that they both took seriously. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful. Several of the ranch hands Isaac had worked with showed up with food and gifts, and some of the more friendly townspeople brought baked goods and well wishes. William McCready gave them a beautiful handmade quilt as a wedding present, created by his wife Clara, and wished them many years of happiness. Mary and Samuel were the stars of the celebration, basking in the attention and the festive atmosphere. Samuel declared to anyone who would listen that he now had a papa again, which made Isaac have to excuse himself for a moment to compose himself. Mary stayed close to Penelope, but Isaac noticed her watching him with a small smile, and he knew he had been accepted fully into the family. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Isaac and Penelope stood together outside the church, watching the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Morrison?" Isaac asked, still getting used to the sound of her new name. "More than ready, Mr. Morrison," Penelope replied with a smile. "Let's go home." The wagon ride back to the homestead was peaceful, the children drowsy in the back and the adults content in each other's company. When they arrived, Isaac carried a sleepy Samuel inside while Mary stumbled in on her own. Penelope tucked both children into bed, kissing them good night, and then finally, Isaac and Penelope were alone. They stood in the small cabin that was now truly their home, and Isaac pulled his wife into his arms. "Hello, Mrs. Morrison," he said softly. "Hello, Mr. Morrison," she replied, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. "Thank you for today. It was perfect." "Every day with you is perfect," Isaac said, and then he kissed her properly, without children watching or propriety to maintain. It was a kiss that promised passion and partnership, love and commitment, everything they had both been yearning for. Their wedding night was tender and sweet. Two people who had found each other against all odds and were determined to build a life worthy of the love they shared. And as they fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, both Isaac and Penelope felt a sense of peace and rightness that neither had experienced in a long time. The months that followed were filled with hard work and happiness in equal measure. Isaac and Penelope worked side by side to build up the homestead, their partnership proving as strong in practice as it had been in theory. The cattle herd grew slowly but steadily, and Penelope's baking business continued to thrive. They added to the cabin over the winter, building on 2 extra rooms to give the children more space and to prepare for the possibility of future additions to the family. Isaac proved to be a patient and loving father figure to Mary and Samuel, and both children blossomed under his care and attention. In the spring, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. The news was met with joy from everyone in the family, though Penelope had some concerns about how Mary and Samuel would react to a new sibling. Those concerns proved unfounded when both children became excited helpers, eager to prepare for the baby's arrival. "You hope for a boy or a girl?" Penelope asked Isaac one evening as they sat together on the porch, her hand resting on her growing belly. "I just hope for healthy," Isaac said honestly, "though it would be nice for Samuel to have a brother to roughhouse with." He placed his hand over hers. "But whatever we get, they will be loved and wanted. That is what matters." The baby arrived in early autumn, a robust boy with a healthy set of lungs and his father's dark hair. They named him Thomas Isaac Morrison, honoring both Penelope's first husband and the man who had become the children's new father. Isaac held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the love he felt for this tiny person. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered, looking from the baby to Penelope. "You are amazing. Our family is amazing." Mary and Samuel were enchanted with their new brother, taking turns holding him under careful supervision and fighting over who got to help with his care. The homestead rang with the sounds of a happy, growing family, and both Isaac and Penelope marveled at how far they had come from that day when she had collapsed carrying water from the creek. As little Thomas grew, so did the family's fortunes. The cattle herd expanded, the garden flourished, and Penelope's business continued to bring in steady income. Isaac and Penelope worked together to save money, and within 2 years, they were able to purchase an adjacent piece of land, doubling the size of their property. They built a larger house on the expanded homestead, keeping the original cabin as a guest house and storage building. The new house had 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a wide front porch where the whole family could gather in the evenings. It was everything Penelope and Thomas had dreamed of all those years ago, finally coming to fruition. Mary, growing into a thoughtful and talented young woman, developed her artistic skills and began taking commissions for paintings and drawings from people in town. Samuel followed in Isaac's footsteps, showing a natural aptitude for working with animals and the land. Little Thomas grew into an energetic, cheerful child who kept everyone on their toes. 2 years after Thomas was born, Penelope gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Peter and Patricia. The homestead was bursting with life and noise and love, and Isaac often found himself pausing in his work to simply marvel at the family he had been blessed with. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Isaac and Penelope stood together by the well that had started everything. It was the same well Isaac had dug with his own hands, the well that had brought him into Penelope's life and changed both their destinies. "You ever think about that day I collapsed?" Penelope asked, leaning against her husband's side. "How different everything could have been if you had not stopped to help." "I think about it sometimes," Isaac admitted, "but I do not think I could have ridden past you even if I had wanted to. Something in my heart knew you were important the first time I saw you making that long walk to the creek. I just did not know how important until I got to know you." "You saved us," Penelope said softly. "Not just with the well, though that was part of it. You saved us by caring, by helping, by loving us when we needed it most. You gave us a future we could not have had without you. And you gave me a home," Isaac replied, pulling her closer. "A family, a purpose." Everything I have now is because you took a chance on me, because you let me into your life and your heart. We saved each other, Penelope." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their thriving homestead. In the distance, they could hear the children playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The cattle lowed in their pastures, the chickens settled in their coops, and the garden showed the first green shoots of the spring planting. "We should go in," Penelope said eventually. "I need to get the twins ready for bed, and Mary was going to show me her latest painting." "In a minute," Isaac said, not quite ready to break the spell of the moment. "I just want to stand here with you a little longer and appreciate everything we have built together." Penelope smiled and settled more comfortably against his side. They had weathered storms and droughts, financial difficulties, and the normal challenges of raising a growing family. But through it all, they had remained partners in the truest sense, facing each obstacle together and emerging stronger for it. The well still stood exactly where Isaac had dug it all those years ago, a testament to the day that had changed everything. But it was more than just a source of water now. It was a symbol of love and commitment, of help offered and accepted, of two people who had found each other when they needed it most, and had built something beautiful together. As darkness fell over the Arizona territory and stars began to appear in the vast sky, Isaac and Penelope finally turned toward their house. Their children waited inside, their home was warm and welcoming, and their future stretched out before them full of possibility and promise. It had all started with a well dug at her door by a cowboy who cared enough to help. But it had become so much more than that. It had become a love story, a family story, a story of survival and hope, and the power of two people committed to building a life together. Years continued to pass, bringing with them the natural evolution of family life. Mary grew into a beautiful and talented young woman, eventually marrying a kind young man who worked at the general store in Clifton Hill. Samuel took over more and more of the ranching duties as Isaac's hair began to gray, proving himself to be a capable and innovative rancher who expanded the operation even further. Little Thomas, no longer so little, showed an interest in mechanics and engineering, and Isaac encouraged this by apprenticing him to the blacksmith in town. The twins, Peter and Patricia, were inseparable and full of energy, keeping their parents young with their constant adventures and mischief. Isaac and Penelope's love only deepened with time, the passion of their early romance maturing into something even stronger. They were partners in every sense, making decisions together, supporting each other through challenges, and celebrating victories as a team. Their homestead became known throughout the region as a model of what hard work and dedication could achieve. On their 10th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration at the homestead. Mary was there with her husband and their infant daughter, Penelope's first grandchild. Samuel brought the young woman he was courting, a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property. Thomas, Peter, and Patricia ran wild with the other children in attendance, their laughter filling the air. Isaac stood on the porch of their fine home, looking out at the assembled family and friends, and felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to his eyes. William McCready was there, older now but still sharp and kind, toasting to Isaac's success. Friends from town and neighboring ranches mingled, sharing food and stories and celebrating the love that had started it all. Penelope came to stand beside him, as she always did, and slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how blessed I am," Isaac replied honestly. "About how one decision to stop and help someone in need led to all of this. About how much I love you and our family." "I love you too," Penelope said, her eyes shining. more than I ever thought possible. You know, sometimes I still dream about that day I collapsed. But in my dreams, I see you riding toward me, and I know everything is going to be all right. You are my hero, Isaac Morrison. And you are mine, Isaac replied, pulling her close for a kiss that still held all the passion and promise of their wedding day. Always and forever, Penelope. You are mine. As the celebration continued around them, and the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build up, Isaac and Penelope stood together, bound by love and partnership, and the kind of commitment that only grows stronger with time. The well that Isaac had built still stood near the original cabin, a reminder of where it all began. But it was the life they had built together, the family they had created, and the love they shared that was the real testament to what was possible when two people chose to face the world together. The story that had started with a woman collapsing under the weight of survival and a cowboy who cared enough to build a well had become something far greater. It had become a legacy of love, a testament to the power of compassion and partnership, and a family that would carry their values forward into future generations. And as Isaac held his wife close and watched their children and grandchildren celebrate around them, he knew that every moment of struggle, every drop of sweat, and every ounce of effort had been worth it for the life they had built together on that small piece of Arizona Territory land, under the vast western sky.